Okay. Hello, everyone. Hi. Hi, Mickey.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
So we're going to dive right in. So is it fair to say that you have every Star Wars fan's dream job, which is interacting with other fans for a living and getting paid?
I think that's a fair assumption.
I love it. So tell us a little bit about what it is you actually do, because obviously the Star Wars universe is huge. Mm-hmm. So just to give you guys some insight, tell us a little bit about what you guys handle in your team.
So I oversee digital content, which encompasses StarWars.com, all of our original video content, which is distributed across all of our various social channels. I oversee the Star Wars app, and I spend a lot of time working with other lines of businesses and different parts of the company on digital strategy that relates to Star Wars. So, there's other Disney groups that create Star Wars short-form content. Me and my team work with them to make sure they're staying on guidelines and that they're using the brand properly and all of that fun stuff. But our core is creating content to engage with our fans through all of our various distribution channels. Some people may be aware of some of this stuff. I brought a little sizzle reel that'll give you some idea of specifically the original video content that my team produces.
And just before we go to the sizzle, how many Star Wars fans do we have in the audience? Woo! Okay, good. So you guys are going to enjoy this session. All right, let's play the sizzle.
Play the sizzle.
Let's go.
The Star Wars Show.
Here's an exclusive first look. This is Rebels Recon.
Welcome to Science and Star Wars. World premiere red carpet.
This is a great summer movie.
Cheerio.
Live from Star Wars Celebration.
Every Toyota is on sale.
I'm on the floor of the D23 Expo.
Comic-Con in San Diego.
Welcome to EA Play.
It's Star Wars.
What?
Oh my God.
Everything is important.
She isn't even a real princess.
Hyperspace Mountain. 2 on the high platform.
None of this is canon.
I think that deserves a round of applause. Woo! Okay, so there's so many questions I could ask you, but for this session, they've asked us to kind of focus on fan engagement and growing a fandom. So, I was curious to know, given that Star Wars has spanned generations, how would you describe your audience and what is your fan identity?
Well, I think I know it's probably cliche to say, but we are a 4-quadrant property. Men, women, boys, girls, kids, adults. It really crosses gender lines and racial lines and cultural lines. It's a worldwide franchise. I think everybody, I'm biased, but I think everybody has a little bit of Star Wars fan in them. And there's obviously varying levels of peripheral casual fan. I know who Yoda is. I think Darth Vader looks cool, to people who really want to engage and follow all the stories and get deeper into the mythology. So it's a very wide swath. It's not purely identified as the kind of, I know nerd culture gets kind of pigeonholed into the in the mom's basement statement, which is it's just not true for Star Wars. It's everyone, I think, has a little bit of Star Wars fans, from young and old and families to anyone.
So it's interesting that you have such a diverse fan base, and that comes with pros and cons, I'm sure. So given that you're servicing such a big audience, what would you say for everyone here are the ingredients that you need to cultivate a true fandom?
First is authenticity. People can see through your bullshit pretty easily if you're not true to what you're talking about. If you're not genuinely engaged and passionate about the content. I think passion is number 2, because I can speak for my team, as you said, I have a dream job, and my team also kind of fits into that. We are all Star Wars fans. We're all infinitely lucky to be in this position and be able to, quote, play with Star Wars every day. It is a job. We have a job to do, and we take it very seriously, but we all come at it with that authenticity and that passion, and we make content that we would want to engage with. And we treat it as if, we're making content to talk to our friends like one would about Star Wars, and have that conversation and make it really feel like a conversation, like a dialogue, like a true interactivity. And I think coming at it from that perspective is really the core of how we're able to do it successfully, I think, is that our audience knows that the people that they see on screen and that are telling them about all these various different Star Wars activities, that passion and that enthusiasm that they have on screen is true. Like we all, when we're not on camera, we're nerding out in the office just like that. Our offices are prominently displayed in our content.
Yeah.
We don't make, our office is not staged to look like a toy house, but it just is, because that's how we decorate our offices.
Now I wanna see
that's how we
office.
decorate our areas, and we are those people. So I think that's how we do it.
And you mentioned this word, authenticity, which I think is bandied about in our industry a lot. And again, given that Star Wars has spanned generations, multiple directors, multiple business units, acquisitions, how do you guys find that authentic voice?
Well, again, I think it comes from using the people who are those people. And the culture at Lucasfilm, even beyond my team, is that through and through. I think the dream job element extends well beyond my digital team. It extends into every aspect of Lucasfilm marketing and senior management and Industrial Light and Magic and Skywalker Sound, which are part of, they're all our brother and sister companies. It permeates through everybody. So even our consistent on-camera personalities are those people, but we bring on, our guests on the Star Wars show. Every week we have a different guest who is a fan or a creator, and we wouldn't have them on if they weren't authentic, and if they didn't have anything to say.
Yeah.
So that's, we kind of police ourselves
Yeah.
to really make sure that we are staying on that line and we are delivering not just information but entertainment and value to the fans who can't get enough Star Wars.
I love it. So it's real fans for the fans, which I
Yes,
think
exactly.
makes it genuine.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit more about your content strategy, because I think it's fair to say you guys are a 24/7, always on, digital content machine, and you have a ton of content at your disposal. So can you step out for a second and talk a little bit about your strategy and approach?
Yeah. It's a balance, obviously. It's really easy to oversaturate our audience. It would be really easy for us to just kind of take the tons and tons of content that we have at our disposal and just constantly find a way to milk or mine it for the sake of content. But we don't think that necessarily benefits anyone. We want to be more strategic. We want to be a bit more focused with the way that we deliver it, rather than just throwing up a ton of content and making people sift through it. And we really spend a lot of time making sure that we're also giving the right content to the right platforms. StarWars.com is the mothership. It has been around since 1996. I'm infinitely proud to be a part of it and to have been there at our 20th anniversary of a website, which, 20 years, that's not that much, but for a website, that's actually super old. And that was started by George Lucas because he believed in the power of the fans, and he knew that the fans were Star Wars, and Star Wars wouldn't be what it is without them. They sustained it through what's commonly referred to as the dark times in the late 80s and the early 90s, when there really wasn't anything. Yeah. It's something we have to come to terms with. It happened. We are no longer in the dark times. There's tons of content now, but still being strategic about it, not just throwing it up because we have the opportunity to do it, but really focusing on what's going to be the most benefit for our time.
Yep.
I also don't have a huge team, so we have to be efficient.
So who is your team, just to give some kind of insight into what it takes to power something like this?
So StarWars.com has 2 editors.
Right.
Dan Brooks is the lead editor, and Kristen Baver works with him. We source a lot of the content from freelancers. Again, the power of the fans. I don't have a staff of 20 writers. We have, like I said, Dan and Kristen write content, they strategize and curate the site, but they also manage a lot of freelancers. I mean, I don't remember last count, but we have like 50 different correspondents that we'll use for various different things, and that allows the site to continue to have a variety of voices. It's not just us constantly, saying from an official perspective, like getting those outside perspectives. We have correspondents all over the world that write different stories about different things. Some are super, super nerdy, really, really deep, and some are much more high level and casual. And then on the original video content, we have a smaller, Star Wars show is essentially about 5 people that do everything. Wow. In the credits, there's a lot of commas, and I do this and this and this and this. We're very small, we're very scrappy and efficient, and it's lucky to have them in-house to be able to do things quickly, which we do. And then obviously for our bigger events, we do scale up. For the live streams, we hire a larger production company to come in and help us. But the core creative and production capabilities are generally done by my team.
That's good to know. It can be done with a small, core unit that's powering essentially all of this fantastic content. Now, just something else I wanted to touch on, because I think it's probably maybe an interesting source of friction, but there's you guys, you own that content calendar, and then of course there's all the other business units across the Disney and Star Wars ecosystem. So how do you manage the connectivity between you guys and all the other lines, and manage what their needs are versus your needs?
It's an ever-changing landscape, but we've worked out over the last few years a good system with all these different lines of businesses. Obviously parks and licensing and parks obviously is becoming very big in the Star Wars world. And we have different representatives that we work with, my team, myself, various different associate producers on my team. And we work with those groups when they have something that they want to get out to the fans, whether it be a new product or a news announcement, a new VR experience like we announced yesterday. And we'll work with the representatives from those various groups and align to their wants and needs in terms of their press releases or their rollout goals. But we do sometimes have to adjust, if we get too many things on the same day or we have a thought on a better strategic rollout for a certain thing, we'll have that dialogue with them. It certainly doesn't just come over the wall and we plug it in. It is definitely a dialogue. And it's also dialogue to make sure that content that we put out for them is appropriate and is content and is not advertising.
That's what I was going to say. So when a film drops, obviously you guys aren't just a marketing engine. So how does that impact your strategy, and what role do you typically play each time?
Well, obviously the films are tentpoles. Those are the big flag in the ground, rally around type things. And we work very closely with the Disney Studio marketing team who manages the film marketing. We'll work closely with them to roll out their content, the trailers and the posters and everything, and all of that stuff goes on our network first. Our YouTube channel is pretty much the source for the trailer. No matter where it premieres, it'll drop there immediately. And that content is amazing, and it holds us all up. And then when it comes to our original content, we find ways to continue that story, either talking to creators or talking to different artists about the art that was in those pieces or the process, and then we'll bring the director on the Star Wars show. We've had Ryan and Gareth and everyone on the show, and they talk to the fans directly, talk about their Star Wars experience, and something that may not be in the broader marketing of that, but that our fans are intimately excited about. We bring them in and have that more focused conversation. So it isn't just a trailer and a poster and a TV spot. We have that additional content that is more of that conversation. And
you're able to elevate much more beyond that. I love it. So talk a little bit about what success is to you. Like, how are you measuring, I guess, for lack of a better word, the value of what you guys are doing? What's important in the world?
For me, it's really qualitative. The engagement and again, YouTube, for me is really a huge barometer to the success. Specifically with the Star Wars show and with our original content, it's the quality of the engagement and the commentary, and we get great feedback from our audience on our episodes. They'll tell us the stuff that they like, tell us the stuff that they don't like. We try to adjust. We try to give them
fans.
We have to, listen to them, and we have to be able to have those conversations. Obviously numbers matter to everybody, but with our content, the big tentpole type elements, the TV shows, the movies, the Battlefront type video games, whenever we have news or information about that, the numbers are always going to spike. I think that's probably similar to a lot of other organizations, and in some sense we are content, but we are also a news organization to some extent. So I don't spend a ton of time noodling tiny view metrics and things like. It's really, do we feel like this content is resonating with our audience? The people that are engaging with it, do they like it? That's the most important thing for me.
So let's look at two case studies of your originals, which are obviously part of your strategy. You've got fantastic shows, so the Emmy-nominated The Star Wars Show, and also my kind of favorite, which was Science and Star Wars. So I would love to know where these ideas come from, and if there's anything that this audience can learn from your creative process when it comes to your original ideas.
Well, I can say both of those I took over in this role just over 5 years ago, and original content was not anything that was being done at the company at the time. When I came in, I came in to ultimately start creating that content, but we had a lot of work to do up front. We had to rebuild StarWars.com, which we did entirely the first year. We launched the Star Wars app, which I'm very proud of. And then we spent time knowing that, I always wanted to do something. I always wanted to do a Star Wars show, and the whole time we just kept going, we'll come up with a name for it at some point. It's just the Star Wars show. And then after a while, we're just like, we're just going to call it the Star Wars show. But that was something we always wanted to do. We always knew that we had enough information and content and a appetite from the fan base for this kind of 10-minute all-in-one hit each week to really make sure that if I'm a busy person but I want to know what's going on in Star Wars, I can watch this one show and get caught up and get my weekly dose in between all the other content. So it took a while to get that going. I had to do a lot of internal discussions with people. I had a lot of explaining to executives why it was important and what it was. And now 115 episodes in, they don't ask questions anymore. They totally understand. Science, a little bit, kind of the same thing, but a little different. And I had a short list of stuff I wanted to make when I came into this job. And a science show was always on the list. It took longer to figure out what that was, again, to the point of not just doing something to do it. We wanted to really make sure we were doing it right and we were taking advantage of what we had.
And again, are you gut checking those ideas with fans before you kind of go forward? Like they're integrated into that decision?
To some extent, yeah. I mean, in those cases, it's generally more of an internal gut check with the company. But again, we're all fans, so it's not like an executive gut check. It's an internal group. Think of some of the most passionate fans in the world, and if they're involved, if they're into it, then we're probably on the right path. Totally. And so science was a little bit, we had to bring in, you've seen it was sponsored by IBM. We partnered with IBM to produce it, and I thank them for that, because otherwise I don't know that we would have been able to afford it.
Thank you, IBM.
Thank you, IBM. And it came out great, and the response was great, and similar to, the question of like, what's success, like that, exactly what you just said, like seeing fans comment that like these are things that, really enlightened them and inspired them, and like, oh man, I never really put those two connections together. So we were fortunate enough to be able to put that together. I'm really proud and happy that we did.
Yeah, it's a fantastic show. And I just want to touch on quickly, because you raised it, which is obviously you partner with IBM for that particular show. And I'm sure there's different creators who are looking for additional sources of financing.
Sure.
So what were those conversations look like? How did you enter the discussions with a brand partner? Talk a little bit about that relationship.
Well, I was lucky in the sense that we have there's a Disney Digital sales team, the DDN, the Disney Digital Network.
Yeah.
Very much. Unfortunately, I know most of you do not have your own sales teams, but that didn't mean that they did. They put some of the pieces together, but I still, I went to IBM in New York numerous times. We had many meetings in LA. It took months to really put it all together. So it was a lot of work on a lot of groups' part, but ultimately it came together, and I think, really happy with where it went.
For sure. And I'm conscious of time, so I just want to talk a little bit about, so you've got content that that the fans want, they enjoy, they love. But this, how do you go a little bit beyond that? How are you creating a two-way dialogue and also actually mobilizing your fan base, which I think is a holy grail for a lot of creators?
Well, I mean, the most direct way that we do that is through something we call the Star Wars Fan Awards. It was actually started in 2002 by George. George Lucas saw, fans, as you guys and many of you probably have made your own Star Wars fan films. Something fans have been doing since the beginning of Star Wars. And George Lucas, again, who knew the power of the fans from day one and was always supportive and just incredibly welcoming for this type of fan content, he enacted the Star Wars Fan Awards in 2002, officializing, from a Lucasfilm perspective, hey, if you guys make these things within these kind of general guidelines, we'll watch them and we'll award you with something. We'll recognize the hard work and the creativity that you guys put in. And they did that for a long time. It stopped in like 2011, I believe, and then in 2015, I kind of brought it back for a couple years. And then we went dark last year because it felt small in the new digital age. Fan films it didn't feel accurate to the digital space and to creators like all of yourselves. So this year we brought it back 3 months ago. Submissions just closed last week, so sorry, you can't get in anymore. But we broadened it out to fan art and still photography and 15-second films. So you don't have to just make a 5-minute film. There's a variety of other avenues, and there's 36 different awards that we'll be awarding across those different genres. And that's a way for us to really, encourage the fan base to do what you're doing anyway. And hopefully, we'll take a look at it and we'll reward you and recognize you for the amazing stuff that you do.
So, and I think you hit on the kind of key word there, which is rewarding and recognizing. 2 words, not one. And I know you guys just recently announced a show at the New Fronts, speaking of fan recognition, and we have a sneak peek.
Yes, so we have a new show called Our Star Wars Stories, which we did announce at New Fronts. I presented it on stage at New Fronts, and we just... The timing worked out perfectly for this. Yesterday, in the Star Wars show, announced officially that it is starting next week. There'll be a trailer on Monday, and there will be the first episode on Tuesday. And what we have is a clip for you guys of the first episode, which is on Albin Johnson, who created the 501st Legion. And if you're aware of costume stormtroopers around the world, if you ever see a large group of stormtroopers at an official event, they are probably part of the 501st Legion, which is a fan organization that is sanctioned by Lucasfilm. We don't control them. We don't own them, but we work with them, and they're amazing. And Albin founded this group about 15 years ago, and he's the first of 5 subjects that we'll be seeing in the series. But this clip is just a very short part of this episode, which talks about the beginnings of how the 501st kind of came to be. If we can play that clip.
There is no VCR, there's no cable TV, there's no Netflix back then. Everything you appreciate about the movie you had to take with you out of the theater. And so I collected bubblegum cards, and I had like the storybook LP so I could listen to it again, and the action figures you could act it all out. For my generation, that was like a time capsule, and we never knew how powerful a time capsule it was till the re-releases. When the re-releases came out around '97, that buzz started percolating, and I just happened to be working with a friend of mine named Tom. We just got to talking about Star Wars, and we realized how much there was a mutual love for that. One thing, it led to another in terms of what we'd want to do to express that love. We'd always talked about the stormtroopers. We were thinking if there was any way you could just live in the skin of Star Wars, it'd be in that costume. It's the everyman. And I said, whatever it takes to have this armor in time for me to be in a theater when Empire Strikes Back is out. That's my movie, right? For a lot of fans. And so we found a little place out in California, paid a ridiculous amount of money for armor, sight unseen. The guy on the phone just assuring me, yes, it looks perfect. And put the helmet on, and my God, I was part of Star Wars. I walk out into the lobby, and then suddenly there's this gasp as people are like, oh my God, a real character from the movie has shown up. That's kind of hard to walk away from. It's a big rush.
Did you feel that you were an ambassador for Star Wars?
Almost immediately. I want other fans to see it the way I'm seeing it. I want to preserve that magic. I want children to be able to have a certain sense of wonder about it.
Wow. Like, So when I talked to you about this and I found out a little bit about the stormtroopers and also this episode, it like blew my mind, the level of recognition that you're awarding and the emotional connection that's actually built between fans and Star Wars. And I know we're not going to talk about it on this stage, but this is a very special episode for many reasons, right? For this particular fan.
Yes, which we won't talk about because we will cry.
Because we both will cry, but you should watch it.
When you watch the episode next week, have tissues ready.
It's an amazing story.
Yes, it is. And so there'll be
I think I might cry anyway. No,
yeah, I know, it's not. But yeah, and then there's 4 other subjects. But this series is really about that. It's not, it's not just, I really love Star Wars because I love lightsabers. These are, people, and there's hundreds, thousands of these stories that hopefully we'll be able to tell more of these over time. People that had just a really, really deep connection and it affected them in a profound way in their lives and either help them decide on a path or help them overcome something that was seemed insurmountable. And that's really what we wanted to get across with this is show those deeper connections and show some of those deeper stories and how Star Wars can really impact you on a life level.
And I know we have time for probably one more question. So in the true kind of spirit of fan engagement, I reached out to a super fan, Josh Chapman, who runs the podcast Star Wars Spelt Out, and asked him if he had a burning question for you. And he did indeed, and it's a little bit more of a fun one. He had some other questions, but I think you've answered them far eloquently. So his question is, for the Star Wars celebration in 2019 in Chicago, can you give us any teasers or sizzles of what's going to be taking place?
It's going to be awesome.
Well, of course.
Star Wars Celebration next year will take place in Chicago, and if you don't know what that is, it's essentially our own little Comic-Con that's just about celebration, or just about Star Wars. Started in 2000, and it's an amazing event, and it's usually a whole weekend, 3 or 4 days. I don't know the numbers for how many people show up, but it's a lot. 60,000 probably.
Wow.
I'm probably getting that wrong. But it's a huge fan event. It's kind of the migration, the congregation each year of all of these people. And while I can't talk about what big content may be there, I think people can assume certain things are happening next year that will more than likely, I'm sure, have some presence there. But I can speak to at least what my team does, which is we produce a 4-day live stream. So if you can't make it to Chicago, you can watch on StarWars.com and our YouTube channel, Facebook. We put it everywhere. We'll be streaming the entire weekend. We do 6 to 8 hours a day. We set up a huge stage. We started doing it in 2015 with a cantina set in Anaheim, and I feel I should say, because we were at Bufferfest, that Corey Vidal was one of our hosts during that event. Corey's a good friend of ours, and we've since, over the last few years, just each time made it bigger and bigger. And it's become our Super Bowl, my team's Super Bowl. I think we have a minute left, I'll talk fast. And each year our stage has gotten bigger, and our set dressing has gotten bigger, and our presentation has gotten better. And we feel like we're really hitting our stride, and we're very excited about Chicago. We're playing with the stage designs, which get me very excited. Seeing very cool things. If you saw last year, one of my favorite things that we did was we took a t-shirt cannon and we decked it out to look like a Star Wars cannon.
Wow.
And so we had all of the stars of the films, and Mark Hamill, and everyone who came on stage was able to shoot t-shirts out into the crowd. And this year we're going to have more of those, plus some other surprises. But it should be a blast. So if you can't make it, there'll be 40-something hours of live stream content. Sit around in your pajamas, watch all weekend. We'll try to entertain you as best we can.
I love it. So thank you. So all make our way to Chicago, and thank you, Mickey.
Thank you all.
Thank you. That's it.